Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. Okay, here we go.
All right.
How's it going, Nikki?
Great.
I'm sitting here with Nikki Glantz, the co-founder of Milestones in Recovery, a inpatient eating disorder center.
Yes.
Just
right up the
right
street
down the
up
road.
here in Cooper City. Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so, and you're a nutritionist as well?
Yes.
So explain this. We've touched a couple of times in this podcast on food, but on the periphery. But it's obviously a super important
Yeah.
conversation. It's an area that many people struggle in. And unique to the Jewish community, I would say, is that it's one of the few acceptable vices, food.
Yes.
Right.
It's a good point. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm sure, there's our audience is not 100% Jewish, but there's a fair amount of Orthodox Jews or people from an Orthodox Jewish background who listen to this podcast. And food, just observing from the outside and from the inside, food is an area that warrants attention.
It does. And that's actually boldly the reason we actually went into business to begin with. I joined right after they formed. They went and found, they were looking for nutritionists that vibe with what they were doing. That's Marty Lerner and Jay at the time. And now Marty and I are partners. But yes, so it is, we are an eating disorder treatment center. We have a really cool niche. And what that is that we blend both the addiction model and medical model. But before that, what is our thing is, so people have eating disorders and people have disordered eating. And then there's the people that are just struggling with food on the everyday in ways that don't impede in their life. And so where we meet up with people is when they are at a place where their life is unmanageable and it's taken over. So we've had people with extreme stories where it's, they're not able to go to work anymore because they're binging, or they've lost their money because they spent it all on food. Like the compulsion has gotten out of hand.
Got it. And then there can be the other side of that, the undereating.
That is correct.
So you're dealing with that, anorexia, bulimia?
All of it, even diet bulimia, people with insulin dependent that will use their insulin to change their body, absolutely. So it's extremes, I shouldn't say extremes, but it's people where life has become unmanageable with how they handle food. And it's the food behaviors. And really, as crazy as it is, and I will say as a nutritionist, it's not about the food. It is, but it's not.
Right.
It's the emotions and everything that makes us feel compulsive around the food in one way or the other with the behaviors.
Okay, so can we go a little bit deeper with that, like what food represents? Like, for example, we've spoken a lot, because of my own story, about sex addiction, right? So in that context, it's not enough to just say, oh, someone's addicted to pornography, but explaining, hey, what is it, right?
Yes.
And then you have the whole subject of sex and then how it becomes addictive and, everything connected to that. So in terms of food, the healthy or unhealthy, that relationship that forms, how do you understand food?
So, so first and foremost, there's some areas. So it's sugar, flour, the combo of sugar and flour, fat and salt. When you look at those items, those are the ones that are more that people struggle with either the restrictive of or the overeating of. So when I talk to clients and they say they're struggling with food, rarely is it, I overate on broccoli. Rarely. Right. It's the sugar and flour, and that really speaks to the industry, how foods are made and the processing. So it's very highly processed food, sugar-laden foods. And then the separate piece is what it does to our brain and our body.
So you're almost speaking of food, right? Meaning there's certain ingredients within food, which are like a drug.
That is perfectly said, Ellie. Yes. That it is truly. We either say the allergy, the poison to the body. It is what reacts. So there's the premise of food addiction and then eating disorders, and we kind of talk about both at the same time. So food addiction speaks more to the item itself, like the sugar part or the flour of the body in the body. That's the food addiction, so it's the substance itself. And then the eating disorder more deals with like the emotions, the people, places, and things in our lives that have caused us to use food to fix the feeling. And that's really the base of everything. Using the food to fix the feeling. And some of us that run that addiction in our blood will have more of a compensatory to be more of an alignment to become an addict around the food.
Okay, so this is fascinating because, you have process addictions and chemical addictions, right? So a typical process addiction, let's say, would be gambling or sex, right?
Yes.
Process addictions. And then drugs and alcohol would be chemical addictions.
Yes.
But the way you're describing food it kind of overlaps into both, both chemical and process.
Yes, right. And the theory's still out. There's a lot of science being done and already backed on the food addiction piece. Like truly understand. There are people that when they come to us, like they finally found a place that really gets that food can be addicting. Certain foods can be addicting. That it's not just, oh, I want some more. It's like, I will get more. I will eat more. There'll be nothing that will get in my way, and don't you try to stop me. And then there's people that have struggled emotionally and have always used food, and then they find that they're using that food so it runs both. But some people struggle with like, okay, is it the struggle is not only that in their lives, but then how it affects them. So they try to leave out the food, but then they still engage in the behaviors in other ways, and it leads them to gambling or sex addiction because they put the food down. We get a lot of referrals from drug treatment centers where the people will put the alcohol and the drugs down and the food pops up.
Oh, understood.
And really what it is, if you look back, or if you talk to a lot of people that struggle with addiction, not all, but a lot, that addiction started way early. Like the first memories are actually around food and having, hiding cookies or, having a parent come in with the groceries and going to see what sweets were purchased or, overeating at Shabbat or something and not knowing that was going to be or is going to be or is a problem. And then it grows. And sometimes it goes into alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one discussion we had here about eating disorders was a woman, Dvorah Kamen, who the conversation centered more around her experience with plant medicines and stuff like that, but she herself treated eating disorders and had her own eating disorder. And one of the things she said, curious if you agree with it, is that because the relationship with food is established at such a young age, right? I mean, essentially nursing.
Yes.
And then independent of that, at 1, 2, 3 years old, children start developing a relationship with food. The traumas and the healing that the traumas around food are often formed very young, and the healing that's necessary in the work you do often has to go really far back.
Absolutely. Well, you said in the beginning, you said, a lot of times like the association with addiction, like there's an addiction, there's something into that connection. Even if I may, with Jewish people and the culture and I want to say the delight and the demand around food. It's lovely and it's also a demand, not a demand, but it's a beautiful thing. But I will say this, so it's a lot of pressure. And it's not just a Jewish culture. I mean, there are other cultures, absolutely. When I say that, I think because it's, I so identify with that. But the truth is, for all the people I've treated, every culture has something with food. The holidays, even how we meet, how we socialize, all of that is around food. And so the pressure is there, absolutely. It starts early, and the food association starts early. And we don't know we're doing that in the beginning. We don't know that until it gets out of hand.
Right.
So,
yeah. What I meant about the Jewish connection is just that a lot of other vices, whether it's sex or gambling or other stuff, definitely have to be put to the side in Jewish culture. If it's done, which obviously these things happen, it's not acceptable within the society.
Okay.
Whereas food,
it is right.
Yes.
It's the one. It gets to be.
Yes.
Right.
So a lot of things get channeled, similar to what you said about someone who goes to drug addiction rehab. So they take something off the table. What pops up?
We say it's like a game of whack-a-mole. Like you put one down and boom, the next one pops up, and we're there to deal with that. So yes, it's very much, and it's the truth. And people notice it on their own. Like they'll go to take out, a lot of ways. And again, not just speaking of addict mentality, but anyone wanting to let go of something, eliminate something, they put it down. And they notice, okay, I was able to put that down, not easily, but then something else popped up. Like I had someone share the other day that she had recently lost a lot of weight, and she said, I immediately started feeling uncomfortable in my body. And it wasn't a medical feel, it was like uncomfortable. And not that this is everyone's story, but there's trauma behind that, to feel uncomfortable in your body like that is really saying like, right, I use weight as a safety, as like a guard, as a thing so that I can feel safe around other people, which usually means you didn't feel safe younger and you used your body, your food to get a body that made it feel safe, which is
Right.
like, wow, because who would know when you're eating that food that that's what you're doing? The connection is amazing.
Okay, so let's go back to the four foods you said earlier were sugar, flour,
And then so the
fat,
sugar,
salt.
yes. And typically it's the combo of them. So the fat and salt combo is a big one. And it's, so if you think about, so items would be like the cakes and pastries and pastas, things like that. The fat and salt are like nuts and cheese. So it's not that it's not cheese is a problem or nuts are a problem, but like a salted roasted nut in comparison to a raw natural nut. Yeah, I mean, I always use Joey Tribbiani from Friends. Like, it has more of like a "how you doing," feel. The salted roasted nuts, like, hey, where the other one's like, "Oh, great, the nuts are here." Like I mean, they serve their purpose. Where this one's like, "Hey," it's
Right.
like, and as soon as it says "hey," it's like, now I don't want it to end. There is no amount that's okay because it's like, right, the serving is the bag, and however big that bag is, unless someone
Right.
pulls me away, that's what I'm doing.
So okay, so that's the physical.
That's the fat and salt. Yes.
Right, that's physical aspect of it. What about the emotional relationship
Oh.
with food? What does it represent for?
I would say, the big term, but everything. It is people's comfort. It is their, I dare say, their lover, their friend, their foe, their everything. It's the, I get to come home. I handled the day. I talked to people. I did my thing. I get to come home and be my time with my food and once that feeling is felt emotionally, and that's the connection, and that's the highest dopamine hit you get from the food or the emotional connection to it, who's going to want to give that up? But then the compulsion becomes bigger because it's now, I don't want to find a lover. I don't want to find a friend because I have mine. So we start to isolate. This is when life starts to become unmanageable. But in the time, and this could take years to kind of develop, where it's like, yeah, I'll meet you. And then, I don't meet you because I'd rather stay home with my food. I'd rather,
Right.
And it doesn't have to be the binge. It's just the creation of it. It's, like I said, the lover, the connection, all of that. It's, some of the things I do with clients is I'll say, okay, let's not pass the threshold of the bedroom with food. So the threshold, that doorway is like, the bedroom is our sanctity, our safe place. And it could be for a single person, my safe place. And so just to have a person not cross that threshold with food is big. Just that, because the connection they have is in my bed, cozy, comfy. And it's like, no, bring it back to the food. So all of those things. So it's a lot.
Very interesting. So you're obviously dealing with the most extreme cases.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference between someone who's struggling in their relationship with food through overeating or undereating? Is that very different emotionally, or it's just the?
So we often say it's really on a continuum. Not that one will mean you'll get to the other, but my partner Marty has a saying that which we use all the time, which is it's like switching out chairs on the Titanic. So in reference to like undereating, overeating, or doing any of, so if someone who's bulimic, which means they overeat, they binge food, and then they do some sort of compensatory behavior like an overexercise or restrict or purge, like vomit, like those are those behaviors. They give up that and they switch just to binge eating or, just restricting and not binging. So you think you're working on it, and you are, but you've traded out chairs on the same Titanic and the ship is going down.
Right.
So there are differences, but they're all just like one trading out until you work on this. I always say, turn the lights on and let's work on the emotion behind it. That's why I started and I said, it's not about it's so
Right.
about the food, and then it's not. So that's kind of the difference is like, does the food stay as like, okay, I struggle with food, but I'm able to kind of draw my line and be like, okay, I'm not having any more. This is where the meal ends.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question. I might have gone on a tangent on that for you.
So say more about it, because I'm thinking if someone's listening to this and they want to know, yes, you are dealing with the more extreme cases,
Yes.
right? So we're not really answering this question for
Really, and we do
the average person who struggles with it. But how does someone know if this has really become a problem?
It's a good question. So first of all, I do want to say when people call us, sometimes they don't know. So we always, and what we do, one of the services we offer is we do an assessment because it helps someone to assess, do I have that or do I not? Is this something, am I just looking to lose weight and want to come to like a weight loss place? That's not what we are. But we will do an assessment at no cost to allow that person to figure out what's going on. That's first. Second, if it was just to help someone evaluate, the first question I would say, does it stop you from living your life? And that means, are you taking off from work? Are you not able to get a job? Are you not socially connected with friends? Are you pulling away from things?
Right. Does your relationship with food
stop you from living your life? And at first, the usual answer is no. And then you have the observation time. So it's first whatever the question gets asked, and you need time to ponder it, because if you're living your life, it's the same brain that got you into this eating disorder. It's the same brain that's going to be like, no, defensively, no.
Right.
Why are you saying that? But just over time, like, I do notice I'm not going, I'm not engaging, I'm not, and it is a disease of isolation. Eating disorders are. It is you quickly stop hanging out with those people, like addiction. I mean, it's it's a disease of isolation. But to that point, I would say to someone, if you feel like, and there are ways to assess for like more the addiction piece, like the tolerance. Do you need more food to feel satiated? Do you need more time when you give up? If you ever try to give up sugar and flour, do you have withdrawal, like the headaches, the irritability? Like those are indications of like, hey, I might have more of a problem. It's not just a bite or two of something or a dessert after a meal. This is, I always say, like, if you took brownies and you cut out like, oh, this is my brownie. It's like, no, that's for you, and the tray is for me.
Right.
More of the compulsive side of it, but yeah.
So what about someone who deals, like, this is maybe more my experience, like that. One of the things I've been working on with food is just being comfortable in a state of hunger. There's this guy, Bracken Darrell, I think his name is. He's the former CEO of Logitech. Uh-huh. And he has a TED Talk on just being willing to be in a state of hunger. And he's not only talking about physical food hunger, but just in general, even financially, just, even if someone has a lot, maybe not to spend like they quite do, just so that they continue to have that state of hunger.
Yes.
And I find that feeling has been work for me to just be comfortable. I'm not talking about famished. I'm talking about just
the acknowledgement
empty stomach.
of, correct.
Yes.
Right.
I could eat.
Of course, yes.
Right.
No, I'll tell you, that's very hard to do. That's very hard to do. I would say on just everyday person, and then certainly if you had an eating disorder. So, yeah, I mean, that's actually what we deal with is being getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because usually what we do is we fix it. We fix feelings with food. So to ask someone to stay in a hold of uncomfortable is really being aware of your surroundings, aware of your emotions, aware of your uncomfortability. Normally we go to fix it. As humans, we thrive on structure and comfortability. We want to feel comfortable. That's what keeps us at ease. So absolutely, to ask someone to do that, I think anybody would. That's hard. I think that's hard. I think it's doable, and I love the goal of that. I would say, it's so funny for being in. I want to say in the business, of helping people. It feels hard to lead someone to the, to uncomfortability, but there is that level where we talk about the pause at work. And that's a bit, one of our therapists is known for that. And we talk about the pause because the reality is you're engaging in it, you're all in it, right? And then to pull that apart and be like, okay, this is me in the crazy. This is me pausing in the middle, and it's that space between where you can see, and it's like, I never stop and think about what else is going on. What drew me to the food, the gambling? And so when you say hanging in that uncomfortability, if I switched the word, because I'm actually uncomfortable with the word uncomfortable.
Right.
It's like, if I was like, okay, the pause is, let's just take a breath and not engage in that thing, that money. Let's see what happens here. And then we work on recovery. We work with people to work on like, what are some, actions you can do to distract or to help you get through that. So I like that mentality, and we just use it a little differently. And yeah.
Right. No, and I understand you're dealing with, like you mentioned, like an unmanageable type of case. This
sure.
is not unmanageable.
But I like what you said. Like, I like that. Yeah.
Just noticing it.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And I think that's healthy in a sense, because it's really checking out, because we often have people, when we do the pause, we say, if I wasn't thinking about food, what else is coming up? And it's really to allow a person to say, right, I'm so quick to respond that I get enwrapped in the whole thing again. I can't figure out what's really bothering me. Is it medically? Do you have stomach issues? Is it, I will quickly reference, like, is it an email you saw that, you read it on the go and then you're like, all of a sudden angry? I mean, I don't know if that's,
right.
It's like, what just happened? Like, why do I want to go eat? What just happened? It's like, that was the email that got me upset. nothing to do with the
Food,
food.
right.
So, and the premise behind all that for us is we establish a food plan. That's my job as the nutritionist. You know, I do that with the client. And then we basically wait for the problems to bubble to the top, and then we pluck them one at a time and start to help them deal with those. And because they're not in the food. So we're not what we call putting out fires. Because if we're putting out fires, we cannot deal with, what you can not measure, you cannot manage. So you need to be able to measure it to manage it. So a food plan is like, this way I know I'm not physically hungry, I'm feeding my body, and I'm not emotionally responding to food.
Right. Okay. Meaning you know that this is enough food for you.
Correct.
Right. So you're
And
not
so this
getting
way
caught
it's like,
into,
because the
am I
question is
hungry?
like,
Do I need more food?
Right, because if that, then you always will question like, is that enough? Is that why I didn't eat as much, and that's why I'm hungry? I should go get something.
Oh, I got
yeah.
you.
So it quells the uncomfortable and says, okay, you're okay. Now let's deal with what doesn't feel okay.
Understood.
Yes.
So you use the addiction model in your
Yes,
recovery.
we have a blended model. It's addiction with medical.
Understood.
Yes.
But so before we go to the medical, from the addiction model, if you're saying flour, sugar, fat, and salts, like that combination is addictive, do you go to zero like in the addiction model?
Great question. So we don't do so sugar and flour. We the way we do it is you read the label, and you read the first 4 ingredients, and we don't want to see sugar or flour in the first 4 ingredients of that product. So typically,
What do the first 4 ingredients mean? Is that the amount?
Yes. So thank you for. I sometimes assume, and that is not the right way to go about it. So correct. Ingredients are listed from most to least. So when you're reading the first 4, you're reading what's in there the most. And we've been doing this for 25 years and longer. So the idea of the first 4 ingredients has held true. That if the sugar or flour is in the first 4, meaning if it's number 5, you're okay. You're okay. If you find a food that has sugar in the 5th ingredient, technically you can have that food. So it doesn't eliminate it completely, but it does eliminate like the candies and the things that we tend to overeat. So yes. And then fat and salt, we do not eliminate those. But what I say is like, so if you're someone that when you eat that food, because there's plenty of foods on the food plan that are fine for me, but you might be like, watermelon's a problem for me. Every time I eat it, I want to eat the entire watermelon. And that's a fruit, but for some people, it's just a little too sweet for them. So,
Understood.
Yes. Yeah.
So some of it is kind of trial and error in working with that individual
Correct.
person.
Very personalized, and that's important for us. And that's why we've stayed actually small. People have tried to acquire us over the years, and it's kind of like, you know what, we love what we do. It's really to help more than anything else, and we know, and I'm not poo-pooing all the other eating disorder treatment centers, but our thing, because we blend that addiction model and the medical model, we're able to say it's not just, because if it's intuitive eating, that's the other side of it, is lovely if you don't have an eating disorder. Like, what do I feel like? What do I need? That's the intuitive model. If you have an eating disorder, that meter of I don't know what I'm in a good moment. I'm
Right.
like, yes, I need 4 strawberries and 3 chocolate chips. How lovely. Like, not on a random Thursday, no.
Right.
And then from that Thursday for the next week, I'm out of control with food. Yeah, that's hard. And also we're very real life. We apartment style live. You make your own food from day one. You food shop, you make your own food. We do food classes and things like that so that you learn. So it's not tray service. That's a little more about us than I just.
Oh, I got you. So at the treatment center, people are making their own food.
Oh, yes.
So
It's
developing
very
more of a
important because
relationship with
our line is like, your last day in treatment needs to mimic your first day home very easily. Like, it needs to blend real easily. So your transition home is as smooth as possible, because otherwise, I did it in treatment, but how do I mimic that at home? We mimic it from day one. It's not a hospital-like setting. You live in actual apartments. You go grocery shopping twice a week. You work on meal mapping, like you map your meals for the week. You make your stuff. You bring them to the center for lunches. You have dinners as group. So as real life as possible.
I got it. Understood.
Yeah, it's very important.
So just make sure I understood. So with fat and salt, you don't treat that fully like an addiction?
Right. That one's more. So because excuse me, some people do not have an issue with that. So it's not all.
Right.
So sugar and flour are our main ones. We know that. Like, that is proven. The fat and salt is
So
also,
sugar and flour, you cut out 100%, as long as it's one of the first 4 ingredients.
Correct. Because those are the ones that truly kick up that dopamine hit and make it like, dun, 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 dun. It's not, oh, cool. It's like, oh, I want it. It's almost like you lock in, like, I want it. I want more. Get out of my way. It's almost the feeling, if I could describe it, would be like, oh, you're staying here? That's great. Could you go to bed soon so I could get in there and have what I want because I feel judged by you and I do not want to eat in front of you, is really the person judging themselves, but, it's reflected on others.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you're talking no breads, zero, no crackers.
So we do, I like,
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
no, I get it. No, let me go in more descriptive for you. Okay, so we do actually, so the carbs that are on the plan, everything from sweet potatoes, baked potatoes, different kinds of rice. There are wraps, rice cakes, and crackers that are on the plan. You can have Mary's Gone crackers. There's Wassa crackers, Ezekiel wraps. Right. And so there are definitely things we have modified so that because you need to be real life. You need to be able to grab and go and do.
Right.
So absolutely. Those are on the food plan. It's more the processed carbs and the sugar-laden carbs.
But bread included off the
bread
table.
included. Yes. Yeah, yes. Most people struggle with that.
So is this a treatment plan or is this for life, like with
so
addiction?
The treatment plan, so in treatment, that is the way we roll. Like that's how we roll. And we do say, yes, when you're, like I said, that last day is like first day home. Now, along your recovery journey, there are going to be foods you're going to reincorporate in, if you can handle it. There are some, it's by the book, and I back that for them. Then there are some that it is in their best interest for us as the time goes on and they're working recovery to reintroduce some foods and try them out with while you're talking to whether myself as your nutritionist or your sponsor, someone in recovery. So it's not just, hey, I brought it back in because I decided. It was a little more methodical.
Right. So it's very, it's like tailored to the specific.
That is correct. Because some people need to know and they need to hear that they can't have that food. For some, it's like alcohol. If you think, some people trade the word out in groups, will say that like, okay, treat it like alcohol. You don't say to someone who has identified themselves as an alcoholic, well, let me bring back beer because that's going great. Like, no, it doesn't work. Or just switch to wine.
Right. That's why I was trying to understand.
Right. Yes, correct. So from that perspective, it is that. Then there are people, and this is that meeting them where they're at, that want to incorporate some things back in as they're working the recovery, and I will work with them to figure out what works. Because I'm always going to try to meet you where you're at. That is my true goal.
Right.
In treatment, we start clean. We start here because we know it works. It's too established. I feel very solid. 25 years, I'm not playing. Like, I know what works. And then as people live their lives, we have different careers, hours, we get married, things happen, beautiful things, and we've evolved, and our recovery has evolved, and as a person, and we've done the work, and we can allow certain items back in. They don't call to us the way they did. So it's a beautiful thing when someone is able to do that.
Right. Fascinating. In the sexual addiction recovery model, which I've been part of that program for a while, there's kind of two models. Mm-hmm. One is two schools of thought within addiction, meaning there's some schools of thought that it's not an addiction at all, so I'm not dealing with that, just within the addiction recovery model. And one is kind of like, hey, these are the acceptable behaviors, these are not. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to tell you from the outset what they are. Do this, don't do that. If you do this, you're sober. If you do that, you're not. Mm-hmm. And then there's a second one, which is much more tailored to the specific person and say, okay, what do you find addictive at what points? Mm-hmm. And it's also looking at, which is kind of how I encountered eating, is also looking at what are the things that kind of prompt those desires. And what I found was, in my case, this is going back a while ago, was that overeating, when like that very, very, very full feeling, did the same thing to me as if I was drunk. Mm-hmm. Like it just...
Absolutely.
And I realized like if I get to that state, it's going to be very difficult for me to deal with my addiction. So I had to take that off the table as part of my recovery. Not that I stopped eating, but just like that.
No, you saw the association. You
kind of like the hamburger and beer and that kind of feeling
Yes.
at the end of the meal, like that had to be off the table.
Absolutely. I have a client who drinking's not a problem for her. She can have one or two drinks. She's fine. When she has the second drink, again, not a problem with the alcohol, always craves the food and always overeats. To binge.
Right.
So her association is she finally got to a place, I can't drink. Now, it was not the alcohol that led her to more alcohol, but it led her to the food. And that was hard for her because she doesn't have an alcohol issue. She could have one drink or two. Didn't matter, but always overate when she drank alcohol. So
understood.
It's like
right.
that
Yeah, they can kind of go both ways. Got it. So your model, going back to the different models in sexual addiction recovery, is more of the tailored to the specific person and saying, okay, what do you find addictive? Mm-hmm. What are you struggling with? And then over time, working with whoever the nutritionist or sponsor, whoever is that is guiding them through the process, can add or change
Yes, I mean,
Thanks.
I do want to say, so like if because I work with people most closely in treatment, I want to say like, we do no sugar, no flour. I mean, that is how we do it. We roll like that. And it works for anyone who when they stay in treatment, the relief is immediately felt like over their time. It's like, wow, like I do feel like they feel that. And I want to say, and that is, we're holding to that. And then as life evolves, I certainly want to meet the person where they're at. So I don't want the message to be like, oh yeah, and then you just start incorporating things. It really is, I believe in the no sugar flour because I see the difference it makes in
Right.
people's lives that identify as that is their addiction. And then, yes, for many, I will meet them where they're long term. And I'm proud to say I stay in touch with so many clients and I help them evolve
Right.
with the yes.
Yeah, I was saying that more in terms of like the fat and salt one.
Yes,
Right.
correct, yes. And even some people, I will say flour, so sugar might be their thing, flour not so much, but they did that in treatment, and then they've incorporated like a whole grain flour, and they're okay with certain foods.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the same is true with sexual addiction recovery, right? There's certain things that are off the table completely.
Right.
I don't find it addictive to be with a prostitute. I mean that's not like no,
Right, that's it,
right.
right.
That's just off the table. Yeah,
Thank you,
it's
right.
talking about other kind of stuff. Like for example, there's one program where it's any sex outside of marriage is not okay, right? And it's like, if it's a relationship, then there's something real there. Then it could work. Like what's the problem? And people put pornography sometimes in different places, things like that. Where extreme unhealthy or lesser, not addictive. So that's where the questions come up. But of course, there's certain things that are off the table completely.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. I just, as you're
You were
talking,
just
you're
trying to gauge.
that's kind of my frame of reference, right? That's from the addiction recovery. I know that model, so I'm trying to see how food compares
Absolutely.
and contrasts to
Yes.
it. So you guys don't offer anything for if someone reaches out and they're, what did you call it, disordered eating?
Right. So there's disordered eating and eating disorders. Yes. And anywhere in between. So like I said, we will, like if you call with like, I'm not sure. I think this is, we will do what we call an assessment. We assess them and there's certain questions we ask and we can help them kind of figure out like, yeah, it doesn't sound like you have an eating disorder. It's more disordered eating, which is more of I would say the mainstream, like someone struggles with food, but it's not taking over their lives. It's not, yeah.
So when you say take over lives, how much of it is like physically observable, right? So someone who's overeating may be very overweight, or someone who's anorexic or bulimic may be very underweight, right? So those are
ones you can see on the outside.
right. So that's what I want to talk about, the ones you can't see.
Right. It's really, the irony is like that. Yes, that's definitely a piece, but it is not the bulk of it. It's really,
So most of the people who come to you, you can't see it on the outside.
I would say 50% you cannot. You would not know. You'd see them as the nurse, the teacher, the principal, I don't know.
Right.
And you would not know.
Okay, so what is it that you're looking for in the
assessment?
Yeah.
So we'll ask questions, more number-based questions like how often do you feel like you're overeating, or like how many times a week is that happening? What does it look like for you? So for some people, they'll say twice a week I overeat after dinner. Some people will say every night from dinner up until 2:00 in the morning, I'm eating about 10,000 calories. For some people, if it's exercise addiction, it could be, on their, they have to take so many steps a day, like 20,000, and they miss their child's, play because they had to get the 20,000 steps in, or they're late to the blank and blank. So it's more the extremes, or bulimia, what the compensatory behaviors look like. So the restricting, how long do they go? Yeah, if they exercise, how long is the exercise?
So let's talk about exercise, because you keep mentioning that,
Yes.
but it's
So yeah.
how does that relate to?
So that
someone on the
is-
outside can look healthy, eat well.
Right. And it can start off like that too. It can start from a healthy place. There's a break-off piece called orthorexia where it starts from a healthy place, like I want to eat healthier, I want to eliminate this certain food just because I can see it, I react to it, and then it becomes an obsession.
Right.
So that's, and it's helping the person figure it out. So the exercise might be like, I could just think of different clients like where I've had, rain. I mean, we say in Florida, I would say rain, sleet, snow. Those don't matter. But,
Right.
I went to work out today. It was raining. I went in the rain, but I didn't feel it was a good enough workout. So I went out again. Then tonight I need to go back out, or, said no to other events to go to it, or you have to get it done. It's more I use the terms like torturous. Like, it's like, I don't want to go, but I have to go.
Right.
And there's that fine line of like, I'm just trying to be diligent about going versus, no, you have to go and you have to do that a certain amount. And it, if I were to say like the average is, let's say 3 to 4 days of working out a week, every other day kind of thing.
Right.
It's like, no, I have to go. Like we have people call that they're working out 2 and 3 hours a day, every day, not taking a break, or they're hurt, they have an injury and, they're wrapped up and they're going back. So not taking care of the body and just making it the obsessive must go work out, that kind of thing.
Right. Or could it also be just the obsession around it?
Correct.
Right.
Certainly, it could be, right.
Meaning without anything obvious on the outside, but just constantly obsessing over it.
Yes. Then there's body dysmorphic disorder where your body obsessed, whether it's picking on the face or what the arm should look like, or squeezing, or checking your circumference of your wrist and your waist and your thighs and all of that, and just not comfortable in the body. And again, because this is really a disease of not only isolation, resentments and how they build, but then the compulsion is to, if I don't feel comfortable, I'm going to use a substance to feel more comfortable. And it is either the food or the obsession. And then the exercise one, and they'll use like exercise because, I feel stronger, I feel better, but then it becomes, now I have to do this again. It's kind of like when someone weighs themselves.
Right.
I weigh myself once a week. Now I weigh myself once a day. Now I weigh myself 12 times a day. Now I have to eat and weigh myself. I go to the bathroom and I weigh myself. Not like fun, like I've had people say to me like, is it weird that I weigh myself after I go to the bathroom? I'm like, listen, you do you, boo. But if it's like, I have to get home to weigh myself, all right, now I got to scale at work and I have to, like, okay, that has moved to a different level.
Right.
So it's that.
Okay, fine. So I think we're clear about the problem. What is the healing and recovery?
So, we are, typically we start as a residential center. So you come in, you meet with your therapist. We have doctors, psychiatrists, nutritionists, therapists, all of that. And we do groups, and all the groups are centered around all different things from, healthy and body and exercise to processing groups and emotions. And, we do a little mix of all, relapse prevention, all the things. And what you're able to start to do is, first of all, be in a room of people that identify with, oh my gosh, because normally it's a secret. Often it's a secret. Like, it's not like you're telling everybody I'm struggling with food at that level.
Right, exactly.
So it's first and foremost just to be in a place of, we have it real big on the wall. It says, you belong here. Because it's like, to be able to walk in, we're very big on just that intimate connection with people, meeting them where they're at, and understanding like, you've been struggling a long time. For you to take off time to come and work on you is an unbelievable gift you can give to yourself. And we want to make every minute count. So all the groups are very centered around what people need, we know, and then individualized therapy sessions, and then nutrition sessions, and then we work. And typical stay is about 30 days, and we will, depending, about maybe 6 weeks, and then we transition them back home. And we have a telehealth program where once they get home, they stay on for, like, to say 3 days a week and check in. So now they're incorporating back into work, and then they're able to tell us how that's going. And we talk about those things while they're there. We do family sessions, and we really see what the healing starts with, trying to work on. So you're putting the food down, which is big, putting down the behaviors, big. Just thinking about that, the pause in that is like
and then what about the emotional aspect of the healing?
Right. So once you're putting those things down, now
Everything bubbles up.
Bubbles to the top. And then, like I said, pick up one at a time, and we start to work on that. So, if there are issues, people don't even know their work that they've used food or some kind of substance for so long, they don't even know that they have that. That there was something like, wow, I did not even know I had an issue with that. So it is amazing. And so through one-on-one sessions and group, because they're intimate groups and you're connecting, and again, you're with people that are like-minded at this point, so it feels more something you feel more comfortable to share things you haven't shared before. And then you start working on it. And because it's also a disease of isolation, to be with people is to connect, and connection allows so much growth because we've kept it our secret our whole lives.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have this running theory about different kinds of addictions.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it anywhere, but just listening to people's stories and just thinking I'm seeing patterns, is noticing how different, let's say, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, and food, there's often a theme beneath it, like a similar pain. Obviously, there's a quality addiction's addiction. There's also addictions spill into several different categories. But what I found is, for example, a lot of people I know who struggle with alcohol struggle with extreme self-consciousness, right? So in social settings, they're just so conscious of themselves, and it's an uncomfortable feeling to be so self-conscious. So, hey, I drink a few
Take the edge
alcohol,
off.
suddenly I can, Right.
I can mingle, I can
Yeah.
talk, I can.
yeah, and I'm not so, aware of exactly where my pants are going up to on my leg
Yes.
or,
Yes.
how my shoulder feels or, whatever else. Is drugs, I found a lot of people are seeking spirituality, like union with God, and they're chasing that experience through drugs often. I know there's uppers and downers, but in general, so I found. And sex, I've often found like a very extreme loneliness beneath it. Like when I'm speaking to someone who's struggling with porn addiction, I just know like pay dirt is like very, very, very intense loneliness. Nothing to do with being around people, just, at the end of the day, a very extreme loneliness. And then what I found with food was like a self-hatred or a disgust towards oneself, like someone feeling disgusting in some way. Do you agree with that?
First of all, I think it's a great observation, truly. I would say I don't disagree with that. I don't. I think that's a really great observation. I like the way you've stated that. And, what I feel I would add to it is it almost feels like a little of those could be blended, where like I agree with you for sure, the self-hatred or the judgment, the strong judgment on oneself from the food addiction piece. But just how you mentioned, like the loneliness and the self-awareness, I feel like that also, I see that a lot also in our clients. So I would say there's the dually addicted,
Right.
So I would say all of that's there. I think you're right. But I almost feel like for the four things you mentioned, the way you broke it down, I could bring that to a group of for our clients, and I would say they all identify with that. They might not have had the, acted
Right.
out that way, but yes, it's driven there. I think that's, yeah.
Right. I mean, I think all of us struggle with different aspects of those
Right.
things, but when you talk about like
You
enough,
see prevailing strong in that one direction.
yes,
Yes, for that.
I mean, for example,
Yeah.
someone who their commitment, for lack of a better word, to pornography or sexual addiction, like that, willing to do it no matter what is going on in their life. Yes, I'm sure there's some self-hatred and I'm sure there's self-consciousness
Right, but
and I'm sure there's some
it's driven from
things,
that,
but
yes.
the monster is loneliness.
Is loneliness,
Right?
yeah. Yeah, it's not. I want to agree with you because I feel like you pinned it right. I just, what happens in my head when you're talking is like, okay, but I know that extreme loneliness in some of my clients, and I know that extreme hatred, and I know the extreme. So I
Right,
see
I hear you.
Yeah. So, but I don't think you're wrong that if you started with that and then, even those as an umbrella, and then noticed, wow, there's a lot going down in this. So I would say you're probably right, and I see it also
Right.
across the board.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, the focus
Yeah.
more was not to exclude those other things, but really about that self-hatred
Yes.
and
For
disgust
sure.
towards
I mean,
oneself.
yes, and that's why the blending of the uncomfortable in my body and being, the vibe, like you said, with the alcohol
Right.
piece. So that happens a lot too, because really what they're saying is, so it's not only just the self-hatred, it really is also, I'm so uncomfortable.
Right.
I eat to fix my feelings, and the uncomfortable, and I push. It's like the food is to fix the feelings. The restrictive has sometimes a different, but it's also not always, but often comes with being raised in a family where an A wasn't good enough. So you're never good enough. So it's
Oh, I
built
gotcha, like a
into the
perfectionism.
self-hatred. So it goes along with your theory.
Right.
It's not wrong, but that there too, but also with the compulsion as well, the compulsive overeating. So I think you're right, and I would bring a little of those over to the overeaters or to the people with eating disorders. But I don't think you're wrong with the way
Right.
it was headed.
Yeah, and in that way, food is kind of like love, like I'm loving myself.
Yes,
right? So that's
right. I mean, it's for
like
people.
the
It's
self-hatred, and we offset that with
correct.
some love.
Right. Yeah. I mean, really, when I used it, like, it's a lover. It's our friend. It's a thing that's been there. You even said with in the Jewish culture, with Jewish people, that like it's the one thing we can use.
Right.
So when you think about, and I think about it as kids, it's the one thing you're not. Some people, they get into alcohol and drugs early, but you're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Like food is the thing.
Right, exactly.
You can that's legal in the house, and you can use it, and you have access to it.
Right,
So, and it starts early.
100%.
Yes.
Is there anything I didn't ask or any topic that we didn't explore that you think is important as part of this conversation?
I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about all of the things we talked about. I would say that the only thing I would probably add is that I don't know that I would say we only deal with the extreme. So I would say like those that are curious and wondering, it's still an investment, whether it's Milestones or somewhere else, where you find out to ask the questions, be assessed, figure out where you are. If you're wondering, because I always feel like if you're wondering, the curiosity can lead you to maybe an answer, and we can be
Right.
that or help you get you in the right direction. So I would say I wouldn't want to speak to people only thinking of extremes. I would want the curiosity to lead them to find out and let us be that people to help you with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Meaning if someone's curious and they're not necessarily extreme, reach out.
Right, because we
Right.
can
Have an
help.
assessment.
Right, because first of all, if nothing else, maybe it's not treatment, but you need a therapist, and we have therapists and nutritionists that work and can help you.
Right.
But if it is, we can also be that person, and we can do that. I mean, people come in from all over, not only just the United States, but all different countries. So
Right.
we help all sorts of people.
Yeah. And being that with addiction, we have a tendency to kind of underreport or deny or.
Well, right. That's why I say because if you ask, the average person, it's like, oh, well, it's not an extreme. No, I mean, I go to work every day, so it's not taking my life over. Because the functional addict
Right.
is the scariest of them all. It's
Right.
like, wow, you are doing great. Because from 9 to 5, you are on point. There is no worry about that. And then, after 5, which I always say is the witching hour, after dinner, from that 3, 4 o'clock all the way to dinner. And if you haven't eaten enough or you've overeaten and you're doing that, brain starts in that, I call it mental gymnastics, the rest of the night is yours. And you didn't even realize that, yeah, you function well in the day. But because then you start it over the next day and you're fine. It's like, oh, I'm fine. I get up. What are you worried about? Like, well, hold on a minute.
Got it.
So, yeah.
You mentioned one thing. You kind of like sometimes you start on food and then you say things in passing. Just want to make sure I captured also. So you mentioned body dysmorphia.
Yes.
As well. So that's also within the umbrella of.
Yes, so it isn't an eating disorder because it isn't you're not doing an eating behavior around it, but it is behind an eating disorder. So the body dysmorphic disorder is when someone registers their body different than, they don't see themselves how other people see them. So they see themselves as much more heavier or more obese than they are, and they're not, or they're very fixated on size and what they look like, or what their skin looks like, how their hair, like extreme, and so that then leads them to using food to fix the uncomfortableness. They'll spend hours in the mirror. They will evaluate. They do tests, they call it, like little tests on they squeeze their body and check, and it's
Right.
yeah. It becomes way bigger of a problem than just like, oh, do these pants fit? Like they use a tester pant, and every day they have to bring the tester pants out. You have to wear them and see if they fit and all of that. So, yeah, so it's not an eating disorder, but it's definitely behind them and it's there.
I
Yes.
got it. So if someone's just dealing with that aspect.
They also could, I mean, right. We're, basically we're a place of help. I know
Right.
you have House of Healing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to take that from you, but we are a place of like, if we can't help it, we will try to direct
Right.
you towards that, because that is an issue. I mean, if you have body dysmorphic disorder, you are not seeing yourself how others see you. You turn when you go in a doorway because you don't think you can fit when you can. It's to that level. It can be to that level.
Right. Some people have the opposite, where they think they look much better than they look.
That's a whole nother group of people, but yes, God bless them. I always say that is a
Yeah, maybe
wonderful
that's a
thing,
good-
right? Like I'm always like, wow, enjoy that. Work it, girl. Work it. I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the body. I feel like. Every man has probably been asked by their wife, even if they're thin, like,
Oh.
do I look fat?
Ooh.
Like, do I
Right.
look fat? Right. So.
I could do a whole segment just on
Right.
that.
Yeah, body dysmorphia is an interesting one. So
It is.
all of these things you touch.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. That's
Yeah,
what we
so
do.
there's a lot there.
Yes.
How large is your center? How many?
So we have 20 bed facility, and we treat everything across the
Men, women, mostly women?
men, women, over 18. So 18 and older, all the way, and all men and all women.
You do?
Men and women.
Oh, you do both. And is this a problem that impacts more women than men, or
So-
they are more cognizant of it?
Right, more prone to get help. So men are hesitant. So women, it's a little more social norm that, not that women have eating disorders, but that it is more the norm that women can struggle and get help. Men, it's harder to cross that social border of like, I am struggling at a point of like, this is no longer just me overeating at night. This is a problem. So we're always, I don't want to say extra proud, but it is a bigger deal for a man to call and say he, is struggling and needs the help.
Right. I mean, in other treatment programs, there'll be more men than women.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
But it's a social, we have a lot of people that would rather just say they have an alcohol issue or a drug issue, believe it or not. Like it's
right
because that's somehow socially,
for a guy.
well, even girls.
Oh,
Like
really?
yes, like it's easier to be like, I struggle with alcohol. To say I
Oh.
struggle with food is like, wait, what? What do you, what? Because not everyone gets it. So then they're like, wait, what?
Right.
Like alcohol, everyone knows someone that is an alcoholic or has struggled with alcohol. You know that. You grew up, you hear it, you know it. Food addiction, very different. Or needing to go to OA or, struggle with food is different.
Very interesting.
And we're trying to change that and make it like, right, like it's real. It's
Yeah,
okay.
if you need help, you need help.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever you need, we got you.
No shame in that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
It was a pleasure, Ellie. It was
Appreciate
a
you
pleasure.
coming out. And I'm
Thank
glad
you.
that we had the opportunity to tackle the subject, and I'm
Yeah.
sure
Thanks for having me.
many people need to hear it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Of course.
Take care.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're back. This is not the first time this happened.
We're back. Right.
So I actually thought of the question earlier, and I forgot the name of it. And then as soon as we finished, Tyler reminded me that there's an Ozempic craze right now.
Yes.
And I thought to get your thoughts.
I'm so
would
glad
be-
the part 2. But yeah, so it's funny you're saying that. So we are truly, even as a company, right in the middle of what do we do? What do we do? And where we are right now is we have one of our doctors and my partner Marty going to conferences to really get educated on the protocols around it, first and foremost. So we educate ourselves at the highest level. So we're coming from the medical piece of it. Now, when you talk about like business and life, like you just said, like it's everywhere and everyone that can afford it is taking it. Where we're coming at it from is, okay, so we have a legacy, not only of what we do, we believe so much in what we do. It is just like for years ago, gastric bypass surgery, when that came out, when that was more mainstream,
Right.
we had so many people that stopped coming, didn't want, I'm going to get the surgery, I'm not going to come to treatment. And then inevitably, unfortunately, for a lot of them, not all, have come back, have kind of, eaten through their gastric bypass and need the help. Because at the base of it, it's a problem emotionally or the substance that the pill is not going to fix either one of those. Now, that being said, we are because we're thinking this is in real time, right? Okay, what we're going to do is still doing what we do. And then if someone is struggling after, let's say, the 30 or 60 days, like what is the next level that we can maybe incorporate that in and then make that part of treatment? So it won't be we wouldn't say, hey, come on in, we offer Ozempic and we're going to help you get that. No, because we truly believe in what we do. You wouldn't need that. However, there are some people, I as it came out, I started to think of like, there are people, because I remember even back in the day, again, 25 years, I remember being like, I at first wasn't for gastric bypass, and then I was like, there are some people that would really benefit from having their body give them the lead and still work on, program.
Right.
So, and that's the same premise. So it's like, you can't just throw a pill out because eventually that's going to be the same thing. Like it doesn't work if you're overeating. Like it doesn't. So if the compulsion's still there, it doesn't fix it. However, if you're working alongside it and it's something that we believe is again, with protocols, we will eventually be allowing that to be per protocol and the person. This is how we're thinking right now. We would make it part of treatment if it all lined up.
Right.
So we don't want to be like, we're a weight loss center, because that's not who we are. We're so much more, and we truly believe in what we do. And I believe no one would necessarily need it. But there are some that would do better with it along with, and for that, I do want to embrace it.
Right. So similar to the way someone may use a medication for a period of time and
Yes.
another treatment
Well,
program.
and also, I think about it. When I say this is so in real time, like we're just having these conversations internally as a company, and someone referenced it. One of our therapists made reference to, it's kind of like when, although Prozac is an older med at this point, but when it first came out, it's not like, I'm sure people were like, oh, so you're not going to need therapy, or you're not going to be upset anymore. You're going to take Prozac and you're going to be
Right.
happy. Like it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Like, okay, so there's plenty of people on Prozac that still go to therapy and need help, but it takes the edge off. And I'm always like, I use my shoulders as that indication of like, okay, the edge is off. Now I can work on the issues. So it's not the quick fix, but it can definitely be a tool in the toolbox of like recovery. Awesome. So we want to embrace it from that perspective. And I feel like that's going to help us stay current, but also stay true to who we are and what we believe in.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm glad
touched
we
on
added that because that really is important to mention.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
for that.
much.
Of course. Yeah.